Now, more on the head of BHP Billiton's call for the government to introduce a carbon tax. Both sides of the political spectrum have been reacting today. Let's go to our political editor, Chris Uhlmann in Canberra.
And thank you, Ali. And I'm joined by, in the studio, Richard Marles from the Labor Party. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chris.
And in Melbourne by Senator Mitch Fifield from the Liberal Party. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Well, Mitch Fifield, Marius Kloppers has opened up the idea of a carbon tax, says that his business at least wants it. Doesn't that make it difficult for your party?
It doesn't make it difficult for our party at all. It's clear that we don't support the idea of a carbon tax. We don't agree with Marius Kloppers, and if I was a BHP shareholder, I'd probably feel even more strongly about that. But I do think it is a good thing that we have a senior business figure who is engaging in public policy debate. It's probably been a bit too long since we've had senior business figures engaging in serious matters of public policy. But the thing that really surprises me from today is not so much Marius Kloppers' contribution, but Julia Gillard's, the fact that she has not categorically ruled out a carbon tax. Before the election, she said time and again that there will not be a carbon tax. Wayne Swan said the same thing, and she in fact went so far as to say that no government that I lead will introduce a carbon tax. So if there's a complication for anyone, I think it's for the government, and what we predicted is transpiring. We predicted that the Greens would start to influence Labor policy, and this is the first sign of that.
Well, I think, Chris, first I think it is, I agree with Mitch that it's a good thing that Marius Kloppers has got involved in the debate, and I think it's a really welcome contribution to the debate. I mean, clearly he's saying that it's important for our country that we do put a price on carbon, and that's long been our view. Our preference is very much that we have a market-based mechanism, because I think that when you have a market-based mechanism, you better harness the power of our market economy to have an effective response to climate change. But I think it's been a really good intervention on his part, and it just shows how lagging behind the opposition are on this debate, and they really do have to come to the table on grasping the nettle that in fact industry wants them to grasp, which is that we need to place a price on carbon within our economy.
What clearly terrified the Labor Party last time was the idea of a great big new tax, and now not ruling out a carbon tax would seem to open that door again.
Well, look, I think what the Prime Minister has said is that she doesn't want to rule things in or out in the context of having established a process to deal with this. Now, we've had the election that we've had, and it's come up with the particular result, and in the post-election negotiations we've set up a process of establishing a climate change committee which will, if you like, have carriage of the debate here, and what I think she's saying is that she doesn't want to rule in or out any of the options which are considered by that committee. And of course, a carbon tax is a theoretical way in which you could put a price on carbon, but we've also made no secret of the fact that our preference has been to go with a market mechanism. I think people understand that.
Well, Richard, we're not lagging behind the debate. We have a clear policy of practical measures to reduce emissions by 5% by 2020. Marius Kloppers has a clear policy. The Greens have a clear policy. It's the Labor Party who don't have a policy at all. Labor's policy was initially to have a citizens' assembly. That's now been junked. Labor's great new policy now is to have a parliamentary committee, which we don't know what the outcome will be. It's the Labor Party that don't have a clear position, and we've got the unusual situation now where Julia Gillard was crystal clear before the election that there would not be a carbon tax. Now she says that it's silly to rule things in and silly to rule things out. She didn't think it was silly before the election.
Just before we come to Richard Marles on that, though, she also said that she doesn't want to be driven by the 6 o'clock news, and that she doesn't want to continue to play these rule in, rule out games. And can I say, from the media's point of view, we do that to you all a lot. Isn't it reasonable that she leaves her options open?
Well, she elected not to leave her options open before the election. She went to the Australian people with a clear policy that she would not have a carbon tax. We weren't entirely sure what she would have, but she was clear that we wouldn't have a carbon tax. It was held out that there might be an ETS sometime after 2013, but I think saying that I'm not going to play the rule in, rule out game anymore, it's not some new, open, honest form of politics. It's not a decision to not be driven by the evening newses. It's just a new slogan. It's just a new tactic.
Well, look, I don't think that's right, and I can understand why Mitch and the opposition would want to try and walk down that path. But look, the election gave the result that it did. It was a hung parliament, and in those circumstances, what came out of it was a series of post-election negotiations. Now, our position in terms of the way in which we think we should go about affecting a response to climate change, hasn't changed. We think a market-based mechanism is the way to go, but we've entered into negotiations in good faith with the crossbenchers. They want to establish a climate change committee. We've said that's a good idea, and we're going to go into that process in good faith. And I don't think it's unreasonable for the Prime Minister in those circumstances to not refuse to go down the rule in, rule out game. But can I just say, there's no doubt about what we're about. We're trying to have an effective response to climate change. We believe that climate change is going on. That stands in stark contrast to what's going on the other side of the House. I mean, we've got the weather vane in charge of the opposition, the self-proclaimed weather vane in charge of the opposition. So to suggest that there is an effective or uniform response on the part of the opposition is utterly ridiculous. They don't even know whether it's happening, let alone what response they should give to it.
Mitch Fifield?
Well, we do have a clear policy. We have an emissions reduction fund. We have a proposal for emissions rebates for renewable energy. We have a proposal for green corridors and for urban forests. We have a range of policies which will achieve a emissions reduction of 5% by 2020.